Hello, it's Amy Pearson, and I'm here over at my YouTube channel, Being Amy the Blog, and my website is beingamytheblog.com. Today I want to talk about thoughts and feelings. Some of you know that I am a life coach, and I've been doing that now for a good 12 years. I also train life coaches. And one of the things that we talk a lot about as life coaches is how our thoughts influence our reality. And I 100% believe that our thoughts do influence our reality. It's actually really simple to see how that plays out when you talk to hundreds of people and you talk about the thoughts that they have, and then you kind of observe the results and the reality that is created by the thoughts that people think. But one of the things that I'm realizing as I get deeper and deeper into my own spiritual work, and as I'm guided by the work of David Hawkins, who wrote Power versus Force and created the Map of Consciousness, this is one of his books, is that thoughts are important, obviously, and they do create a reality, but we can't overlook our emotional state, our emotional frequency. Because in reality, it's that emotional frequency that influences the thoughts that we think. So life and reality becomes very different depending on where you're coming from emotionally. And I was looking for an example in this particular book, and also in Power versus Force. David Hawkins uses the example of a homeless person and the ways that we would react or respond to that particular homeless person depending on where we are emotionally. And if you're not familiar with David Hawkins' work, he has created a model of human consciousness and has been scientifically able to calibrate emotional frequencies to determine the power, the I guess influence that they have. And what he's found is that there's this midpoint of 200, which is the level, the emotional frequency of courage, and anything over 200, you operate within the realm of power, where you are magnetic, you're influential, you are able to move smoothly through reality without having to force things. When you're operating from emotional frequencies that are under 200, then you're operating within that frequency of force, where you have to make things happen. You know, the ends justify the means mentality. The problem is that when you're creating through force, you're pushing, right? And what you do when you push is that you create resistance. And so that force is always going to encounter counter force. So you're always going to be dealing with resistance. When you're operating from the frequency of power, you are not creating that resistance. You're not creating counter force. So things go smoothly. Things go a lot easier. You are in a flow. And so the idea is to align yourself above 200. And the way that you do that is you turn towards whatever emotion you're experiencing. So, you know, as humans, we deal a lot with negative, or pain, I guess I should say painful emotions, emotional pain. Part of that is just being a human. Like, we can't control our circumstances. People die. There are pandemics, governmental leaders do stupid shit. So, people we can't control how people treat us. But what we can control is how we deal with the emotional impact of those things. And the way that we do that is we turn towards whatever that emotional pain is, and we just allow that energy of that emotion to be there and to flow, because emotions are energy, and they want to flow. They need to flow. A lot of us, though, have learned other ways to deal with emotions that keep us at lower frequencies. we will try to avoid our emotional pain by, doing whatever we do, whether that's alcohol or drugs or sleeping or sex or shopping, creating drama. A lot of times if we're dealing with shame or guilt, we'll stuff it down, we'll hide it, but then we'll project it onto other people in the outside world, and we'll get really blamey and shamey to other people. If you are someone who is very judgmental, or you shame or you blame, chances are you've got a lot of emotion inside your body, a lot of shame of your own, a lot of guilt of your own that you've been suppressing. Another thing we do a lot of times when we're dealing with emotional pain is we complain about it, we verbalize it. And I know in my case, when I do that, it doesn't ever seem to help. It never seems to resolve anything. In fact, it kind of brings everybody else down around me. And so the solution is to allow yourself to just, close your eyes and touch base with what's happening with you emotionally without thinking about it or trying to interpret it or figure it out. Really just allowing yourself to have that emotion and see what happens. And I know for me, as I've been doing this, sometimes after I've kind of allowed that emotion to flow, I'll let out a sigh or I'll yawn. That lets me know that the emotions, the energy is shifting. And so my whole point about this, when we're talking about thoughts and feelings, is that, in my work as a life coach, I've been focused primarily on thoughts and helping people to not only identify their thoughts, but also to shine a light on them, and using a process, Byron Katie's The Work, to evaluate, what is life like with a thought, what changes, if anything, when you let yourself have some space from a thought, and really just focusing on, bringing in new thoughts, which is totally within our power. But a lot of times I know in my life and, with clients that I've had, it's hard. It's hard sometimes to stop perseverating, stop focusing on certain thoughts, bring in new thoughts. And what I am learning is that when you are checking in with your emotions, when you're connecting with yourself emotionally, when you're experiencing emotional pain, which we all do as part of being human, instead of doing all those other things like trying to avoid or trying to, deal with it verbally or suppress, just turn towards it, then what happens is you naturally start to operate at higher and higher frequencies of consciousness, higher and higher emotional frequencies. So I just want to give an example of this. It's kind of a silly example, but in my own life, as I've been working on this, I have noticed that as I turn towards my emotions and shine a light on them and just allow them to flow, I've noticed that just naturally my thoughts will change into thoughts that are just more positive, that, just are higher frequency thoughts. So as an example, I go outside a lot because I have a garden and I have chickens, and I like to, work on my garden, and I like to have my dog come out. Well, she kind of follows me. She's pretty much with me all the time. In fact, I had to put her outside today because she was snorting really loud, and now she's going to scratch on the door because she wants it. So anyway, I go outside and the dog comes with me. And there's some situations where I need her to, we're going inside, so I'm calling her and she just ignores me. She just, doesn't come. And this happened the other day. And typically when that happens, I just get kind of in anger, like just annoyed and angry. It's like, I'll stomp over and I'll just pick her up or something, and I'm just in that frequency of anger. And the thought that I'm having is something like, oh, that dog doesn't listen to me. That dog just does what she wants. She's stubborn, stuff like that. That gets me, keeps me in anger. And it doesn't feel good, right, to be in anger. I don't like it. So I'd rather not, be in that frequency of anger. As I've been using the letting go process, which is really what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about turning towards your emotions, my thoughts have changed. And so, as an example, I was outside the other day and I was heading back in the house and I was like calling the dog, Allie, Allie. And there was this other dog barking, which is usually like there's something distracting her a lot of times when she doesn't come. And so this time, just naturally, I I don't know if it was just like an aha or if it was just a thought, a different thought that was became accessible to me, was that she just like when she's distracted by a dog or a squirrel or something like that. I mean, that's just her being a dog. Like she's like, it's almost like she becomes, it's like a trance. Like it's this trance that comes over her and she can't even hear me. She doesn't even, realize that I'm calling her. So it's not that she's being bad or that she's, like stubborn or, anything like that. It's more just that she's not capable of paying attention to me calling her because she's so distracted by another dog or something else like a deer. We have a lot of animals and out, like just like a lot of animals, squirrels, deer, different things, birds. And so I realized that the other day when I was calling her, and I felt so much more compassion towards the dog, and I definitely was not in anger. And so that, I mean, it really didn't change anything about her. Like I still had to get her attention and get her in, but I wasn't in anger. I didn't stomp over. I didn't march over and get her and pick her up. I mean, I just was compassionate and patient. And that's the way I want to be in the world. And I 100% believe that I was able to access that new line of thinking because I have been so on top of just turning towards my emotions and letting them flow and just letting those emotions release, just letting them kind of just be there without pushing them away, accepting them, and just turning towards them. And there are some, as I kind of shared over the past couple of weeks that I had a lot of anxiety, and the anxiety wasn't like going away every time I turned towards it and did the letting go process. But eventually I started to experience insights that then shifted the energy. So it was over the course of maybe a week or two. But there are some emotions that I experience where if I just quiet myself and I just tune in to it, then eventually it will just kind of dissipate, and then I'll let out a yawn or a sigh. And so that is really powerful. So just, I think part of sometimes our frustration, and this is kind of back to the dog example, is that we expect, we have this script, right, that we write for other people and animals and pets. It's sort of like you want, you expect a rock to be a tree, right? I'm expecting the dog to behave differently when the dog is just being a dog, right? And this is true a lot with some people in my life, particularly my dad. When I shared this example of how I was really upset with him because he wasn't remembering birthdays, it was sort of like I was expecting him to be someone other than himself. I mean, he's just a guy who doesn't remember birthdays, and I'm expecting a rock to be a tree. And of course, I'm frustrated about that. So that's another new thought that came into my awareness as I've been using the letting go process is, that a lot of times I just been placing unrealistic expectations on other people and really feeling like I couldn't be happy or I couldn't be accepting of that person unless they change their behavior. And what I realize now is that it's not that they have to change their behavior. It's that I have to see things differently. That those are my thoughts. But what I've realized is that it's my emotional frequency that allows new, more empowering, more compassionate and loving thoughts to come in. So yes, you can definitely like observe your thinking and use tools like Byron Katie's The Work to help you shift or to get a better perspective on the thoughts that you're thinking and how they impact you, and then choose different thoughts. That's totally in your power. But what I'm sharing today is that when you shift your emotional frequency by continuously using the letting go process of turning towards your emotions, accepting them and allowing them to flow versus, trying to suppress them or avoid them, then it becomes a lot easier to access more empowering thoughts. So that is my insight for this week. And I hope that you try this and see how this plays out in your own life, because it has been really, really amazing for me. So if you found this helpful, please give it a like or give it a share, or, I'd love a comment. I'd love to know if this resonates with you. So thanks for listening. I hope you have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend. This is Amy Pearson from beingamytheblog.com.